They say you see bright white lights followed by an out-of-body experience prior to crossing the bridge. I remember laying in the ambulance, seeing the faces of several paramedics hovering above me before two black curtains slowly shut. I was later told this is probably due to a heightened state of consciousness with sharp increases in high-frequency brain waves called gamma oscillations, otherwise known as near-death vision. It was 7 years ago that I had a life-changing accident, an accident that was supposed to change the way I would live for the rest of my life. I was at the mercy of nature's raw power, fighting to survive and rebuild my entire life. I was caught between the boundaries of life and death. It was February 2017. Two of my good friends and I traveled to Iceland, one of the most beautiful countries in the world. It is often known as the island of fire and ice, as it is home to numerous active volcanoes and glaciers. At this point in my life, I was beyond athletic. We traveled there to hike, to ice climb, to swim, throw any sport into the mix, and I was all over it. There is a lot of geothermal activity happening underneath the surface that we cannot see. But I had no idea I was about to face a tragedy that would push me to the edge of my own existence. On the second last day of our trip, we went on a 2-hour hike to a natural hot spring outside of Reykjavik, the capital. The spring was nestled in a valley of a small mountain range known as the Hot River. Little did I know that this seemingly innocent excursion would become a harrowing test of my own strength and resilience. The day started off just like any other adventure in Iceland. The breathtaking landscapes, the geothermal wonders, and the sense of freedom that surrounded us. The terrain, raw and untouched, seemed to hold so much promise for adventure, and we were ready to embrace it. On our hike up, we would see hot pools and geysers steaming, which were absolutely breathtaking. But at the same time, you knew how dangerous they could be, and we had no intention of going anywhere near them. Like much of Iceland, the terrain around the river was very raw, with little trace of human touch, with the exception of some wooden platforms along the water where individuals could leave their shoes and clothing. There was no signage to indicate where one should access the river. There were tourists gathered throughout, maybe about 20 to 25 people, all lounging in about waist-deep water. We all dipped our hands in to test the water temperature. It was mild, bathtub temperature, if that. So we decided to walk slightly upstream, where we found the water to be a little bit warmer. We set our backpacks down and started changing into our swimsuits. I was beyond excited to get into the hot pool and was the first to step down the shallow dirt river bank. On my way down, the dirt bank gave way. And before I knew it, I was knee-deep in the mud. I was slowly sinking. What no one else could see at the time was I had actually sunken into an underground geothermal source feeding the entire heat of the river. It was scorching hot. I started screaming, "I'm burning, I'm burning." I was scraping at the sides of the moss as I was slowly sinking, screaming at the top of my lungs. I couldn't get myself out. When people ask me what it felt like, I always describe it as continuous knife stabbings. My two friends rushed over to pull me out. I looked down at my raw flesh. My skin was gone. My friends started crying out for help, and when other tourists ran over, no one had anything other than a small first aid kit to help. At this point, my legs were absolutely raw, and the team realized that the few supplies they had just weren't enough. I lost consciousness as strangers from all over the world took turns carrying me. The progress was slow, as I was essentially just a dead weight. They came to the realization that if I was to have any chance of survival, I needed to seek emergency services immediately. Several men took turns carrying me. They used sweaters, jackets, and whatever they could find to create slings. My one friend ran ahead to try and get cell phone reception, and it took 15 minutes of her running down that mountain before she was able to get any cell phone reception to make a call. The team came across an unbelievable stroke of luck when they met a young man who just happened to be doing rescue training in the mountains and could call for help. Shortly after, another tourist who was an off-duty first responder from the USA, Lee was his name, came across us as he was making the hike up. He jumped in to help, determined that I was on the verge of hypothermia and that my blood pressure was dropping quickly. At that point in time, I remember looking up at Lee and asking, "Am I going to die?" His response was, "Not on my watch." When I was in the ambulance, I was on the brink of crossing into the unknown. Imagine your most life-changing moment. Seconds feel like an eternity. My entire life flashed before my eyes, memories cascading like a river, each one carrying its own profound meaning and intensity. It was a surreal and visceral experience. When I got to the hospital, I was about to be put under general anesthesia in an unfamiliar country. The doctors and nurses were speaking Icelandic, and I was being told information I couldn't understand. I had no idea if I would wake up, and if I did, I had no idea if my legs would still be attached. The next 24 hours were a blur. I somehow convinced the doctors to let me travel back home on my regularly scheduled flight that was the next day. They promised that if I was stable enough, I could be discharged, but I'd have to continue to receive emergency treatment as soon as I landed. So after being given a cocktail of every pain med you can possibly think of, emergency services took me to the airport. There was a nurse on board that cared for me. I remember being wheeled onto the airplane in one of those small, slender wheelchairs that could only fit down the aisle. The 6-hour flight was a mix of vomiting, crying in agonizing pain, and wishing for all this to just be over. When we landed, I was quickly transported to my hometown, which happened to have the best burn unit in the province. The Hamilton General Hospital is a tertiary and specialized hospital for burns, where I was for the next 2 weeks as an inpatient. Those 2 weeks were some of the hardest in my entire life to get through. The harrowing pain of every dressing change, the smell of burnt flesh in the air, and the inability to walk, move, or sleep from pain. I vividly remember the nurses meticulously slicing the skin that stubbornly grew in between my toes, preventing them from fusing together. The indescribable agony of having my own flesh relentlessly severed day after day is ingrained into my memory. Doctors didn't know if I'd be able to walk again, and if I did, what would that look like? Now, if the thought of losing my legs wasn't enough, life decided to play another heart-wrenching trick on me, going blind. At just 28 years old, I had already overcome 3 retinal detachments and a cataract surgery. I was told yet again that I would no longer be able to partake in competitive sports, as I was at a high risk for reoccurring detachments and eventual blindness. I was beyond athletic and passionate for sports, and this was just heartbreaking. I knew there had to be another way. I could accept failure to some degree, but what I could not accept was never trying again. So after regaining some focus, I realized that it doesn't matter how many times you may be shut down from pursuing your passion. You can only succeed if you continue to try. And I knew that if I never quit, my passion for athletics could never die. Athletics was my stress relief throughout life. No matter how busy I was, I would always find the time to run, play on a sports team, and compete. It was my release, a release that drove me to exceed in my professional development, excel in academics, become valedictorian, and receive one of the most prestigious awards of my undergrad history. I knew what I had to do, but more importantly, I knew why I had to do it. Like every other student, child, and adult on this planet, I'm not unique in facing adversity. We all have our discord. For me, whether it was life-threatening injuries or personal battles, Sports helped guide me towards a larger purpose. When I could no longer pursue the sports I once could, weightlifting and running gave me the outlet I needed during these tough times to simply put the past behind me. The most important day in my life was when I found my why. I spent more than 2 weeks lying face down on a vitrectomy bed post-eye surgery. It was extremely uncomfortable, but it also allowed me the opportunity to do a lot of thinking. I was unable to watch or see anything as my eyes were recovering, and I could not move while lying down. All I could do was listen with my eyes closed and think. I listened to a number of podcasts and changed my traditional form of learning from visual to auditory. It was this experience that forced me to endure something so uncomfortable while also challenging my mind to think alternatively. I knew that without strict compliance to post-operative face-down positioning, my retinal detachment surgery would most likely be unsuccessful. This long spell of disconnect from physical light, technology, people, and typically sensory inputs made me realize that I didn't need to quit sports. I just needed to change my traditional approach. I needed to be broken down in order to understand my why in life. I started to think differently, that blindness is not just the absence of light. It's an invitation to see things differently. In the darkness, other senses awaken. The touch of a loved one's hand, the scent of food cooking in the air, the words of a song. It's a symphony of perceptions, all played on instruments we didn't even know we possessed. So I really embraced this paradox that losing my sight actually allowed me to truly see. The fear of losing my legs and subsequently my sight became a canvas for resilience. The absence of light created new perspectives, and the thought of never being able to walk again ignited a fire within me, propelling me to discover the boundless strength hidden within. It pushed me to redefine my limitations, to find solace in the darkness, and to embrace the profound truth that sometimes losing something so precious can be the catalyst for uncovering a whole new world of possibilities. My legs, once my pillars of strength, transformed into metaphors for endurance. They carried not just my weight, but also the weight of hope, determination, and unwavering spirit. Every step became a testament to the human capacity for adaptation. This concept of embracing change and finding new approaches is a powerful tool that I want to share with all of you here today. My why is that adversity is always worth it. A comfort zone is something I will always try and avoid. But it took me to be in a place of solitude, pain, and adversity that I realized my why. So let's visualize this for a moment. Imagine you have a box, and within this box lies an extraordinary garden, blooming with vibrant flowers. Each flower represents a challenge or adversity you have overcome. Some stand tall and unblemished, while others bear the marks and bruising of scars. Yet, despite their differences, they all share one common trait: resilience. In their growth and resilience, we find inspiration and hope. Resilience is not about avoiding difficulties or pretending that they don't exist. It is about facing adversity head on, accepting the struggles, and summoning the strength to rise above them. Resilience allows us to bounce back from setbacks, learn from our mistakes, and ultimately grow into stronger, more compassionate individuals. In cultivating resilience, we become equipped with the tools necessary to navigate life's challenges with grace and determination. Resilience becomes our guiding light, illuminating the path towards personal and professional success. So, as we envision this garden of resilient blooming flowers, Let us also envision ourselves as resilient individuals that have the power to transform our lives and make a lasting impact on the world around us. Life will undoubtedly throw challenges at us, and it is in these moments that we have a choice. We can either succumb to defeat or use these experiences as opportunities for growth and transformation. Knowing my why made my what a lot more meaningful, and I've tried to apply these same lessons to all other aspects of my life. Before finding my purpose, I had to discover my passion and what truly grounded me. Athletics was my release from reality that led me to understand what I want to do in life. I implore each and every one of you to embrace the tools I've shared today. Discover your why. Embrace change, adapt, and grow in the face of adversity. Visualize these tools and the blooming flowers that remind you of your strength. Use every obstacle you encounter to emerge stronger and better equipped for the future. Don't be afraid to lean on others to find strength, and don't be ashamed to use pain as fuel to move forward. We hold each other up. We are all human. And make sure you are there if someone needs to lean on you. Success is not final. Failure is not fatal. It's the courage to continue that counts. Fall 7 times, stand up 8, embrace the twists and turns of life's journeys, and let resilience guide you from tragedy to triumph.